So if you are a fan of tattooing, I'm sure you've noticed that there have been a lot of conversations lately about banning colored ink. Why? Well, this started about 15 years ago in the European Union. What they were doing was they were looking at certain molecules and pigments and trying to make sure that these things were safe to be on or in the human body. Certain things are unsafe for humans to be exposed to, things like certain heavy metals in high concentrations, and of course other things that may be toxic or detrimental to our health. The two pigments specifically that we're talking about right now that have actually been banned in the European Union are blue 15 and green 7. The reason these two pigments have been banned is actually associated to a hair dye. Now, this hair dye was tested and they found that there was a higher risk of bladder cancer associated to this specific hair color. What they decided to do for safety was ban everything that was in that hair color that they hadn't already studied. So anything that wasn't overtly safe became unsafe. When they decided to start removing dangerous pigments, they ended up removing 22 pigments in 2022. In 2023, there were additional pigments that were banned. Now, the original pigment ban in tattooing was not a very big deal, which is why nobody really spoke about it. These pigments were easily replaced within tattooing, and the ink's quality was not changed. But when they decided to remove the green and the blue pigment, we all started to worry. These two pigments are contained within about 70% of all of our tattoo inks. So why don't we just get rid of these pigments and put new pigments in? The problem is blue and green typically do not show up in natural things as much as things like reds, coppers, oranges, yellows do. So there aren't as many pigments or chemicals that can create these colors. And the ones that can tend to be more dangerous. So, unfortunately, at the moment, we are having a very hard time replacing these two pigments within tattoo ink with something that is deemed safe. What are our options? Well, there are two schools of thought in how we deal with the situation. First, we have to prove that the blue and the green that exist in tattoo ink right now is considered safe. So we have to do studies to be able to prove that there are no clear indications that these specific pigments are more likely to cause cancer or other things that are harmful to the human body. The other school of thought is to try and create or find a suitable replacement for those colors in our inks. Part of the research right now that is saying that this may be unsafe is actually more related to the removal of the ink, not the application. So what they're concerned about is when UV is brought into a tattoo for tattoo removal, what happens is the pigments break down into molecules, and the reaction can create a cyanide compound. Now, this sounds scary, but cyanide is a naturally occurring substance within the body, and in small enough doses is not going to be harmful. Certain ink brands have created REACH compliant ink, and what this is ink that does not contain these two specific pigments. So why don't we just continue using this? Well, unfortunately, most tattoo artists are not at all happy with how these pigments look in the skin, are applied, and how they heal. Colors in these inks do tend to be a lot more muted, a lot lighter, and they don't pack and saturate quite as nicely as the inks that do contain these pigments. So until we can find a suitable substitute or prove that these two pigments are safe, there are a lot of ink brands that are just not releasing their inks into the European markets. If you want to learn more about this specifically in the EU, research something called REACH. REACH stands for Registration, Evaluation, Authorization, and Restriction of Chemicals, and it was entered into force July 1st, 2007. What REACH does is it is basically an organization that wants to register and organize and create protocols to make certain things safe for human consumption. So this doesn't just pertain to the tattoo industry. This pertains to any type of pigment, whether it's in hair, nails, tattooing, or any other type of dye that is used near a human body. So what does this mean for the rest of the world? Well, at the moment, not a whole lot. Right now, the only other countries that are really having this conversation are Australia and the USA. So without knowing too much about the situation in Australia, I can comment on the FDA situation in America. What's happening in America at the moment is that the FDA is requesting that all tattoo ink has to be registered with the FDA by July 1st, 2023. They also are requesting that all of the labels of the ink have the correct ingredients in them. The problem has been in the past that if there were ingredients on the labels, a lot of times these ingredients were listed incorrectly. And now this has got nothing to do with the ink brands itself. This is happening at the manufacturing plants or the factories. A lot of times they are saying that there are other pigments in these inks when there are pigments that are considered body unsafe. At the moment, the FDA is requesting all of the information and complete registration of every single ink color so that they can ensure the ingredients within those inks are actually properly labeled and that they are safe for human use. So in the US specifically, we don't need to be panicking at the moment. All of the ink companies are already on this, they are doing their research, and they are doing everything they can to either prove that these two pigments are safe or to create suitable alternatives. If you want to learn more about this in America, you can look up MOCRA. MOCRA stands for the Modernization of Cosmetics Regulation Act of 2022. And in this, you'll find out all of the information about why they are worried about this and what they are doing in order to make sure that tattooing is safe for all of us. If you are worried about your safety, you can always just get black and gray tattoos, because at the moment there is absolutely no conversations about any of the inks that contain the black pigments. So things like gray washes, opaque grays, and of course white and black ink are considered safe.